Public Works meeting to order for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. Can we have a roll call, please?
Here. Pettigrew.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Lehman. Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Can we have an adoption of today's agenda, please? We'll go on to general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue, not limited to the item on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote by the council members present. Do we have any general public comments today? Seeing none, we will close the general public comment period. We want to consent items 1 through 5. Let's take number 1. We need approval of the minutes from November 26th. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the approval of the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Normally, I like to go through these public works items individually. I've looked at them last night. I see no reason to do that unless a member of the committee would like us to discuss those individually or would like to pull an item.
Motion to approve 2 through 5. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're going to go on to the non-consent items. Any public comments on those? Hearing none, we'll close the public comment period. And last item on the agenda is from the Parks and Recs Department. That's item 6. And it's a presentation by Steve Wagner on the Rapid City Summer Nights concert series. Steve, the floor is yours.
Oh, you guys moved through that rather quickly. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Steve Wagner. Been a resident of Rapid City here since, well, actually for 35 years this month. My wife of 48 years convinced me to come to school out here, and I found a way to get back eventually, and I love it. So I want you guys to take note that on this, I have at the bottom my name, and I'm also an advocate for Summer Nights, and I'm an advocate for Rapid City. That is not a conflict, but this is a case of I believe in both. It's something great, and I volunteered to help out upon the request of one of the council members. So moving forward here, guess I'll use the button. Okay, the first thing I want to start with is just a little bit of history, because with my involvement, I was asked a number of questions such as how long, where, things of that nature. So this was provided by the Summer Nights group. You have a little highlight there that shows where they have the street closures. They've been around for quite a few years. Their mission statement is there. It states that they provide the community music, and they have a fantastic offering that they do. They're located where they're at. Primarily through a Roger Brooks study that was done back in 2014. The recommendation was to find a spot to make the best for the community event and the least impactful. And I say modified because this is a slightly different operation or location than what I found in the Brooks report that was provided to me. So as far as an organizational structure, what is Summer Nights? They're purely a volunteer organization. They have sponsorship income, and every year they provide excess funds above their costs. They donate it back to the city. They're truly a group of volunteers. It is a free street dance. They have very popular bands. They have multiple beverage trucks. They have food trucks of all types. They provide significant local business opportunities for them to sponsor. And they also have several team building things where businesses in town will work the event and highlight their organization. I also want to point out that they have a no bag policy. They have a fence controlled area, and they've done a lot to control their environment. The duration is 14 weeks. It generally begins on Memorial Day weekend, and then it lasts through August. So there's a summary of their stuff. The current status is that they actually have something that's incredible from an all-volunteer group. Their business model is very well defined. They execute it beautifully. They're timely, they're precise, they really know how to march forward. And actually, I've said to others, their model is something that is worth studying, because as volunteerism is going down in our country, these guys keep knocking it out of the park every year. They volunteer 14 nights of their personal summer to be doing this. Also, current status is that the family-friendly atmosphere has decreased over time. And also, a few shop owners are experiencing higher sales on Thursday nights that have gotten engaged with the process and taken advantage of it. But there are several shops that are experiencing reduced business on Thursdays. And I've confirmed that it's reduced business that doesn't happen on other nights of the year. And with the kind of software and tools we have right now, I have witnessed individuals that can pull up their financials on their phone and show it to me. And when I ask the question, all right, so sure, you show me how Thursday takes a dip in the summer. How about a little earlier or a little after? I'm talking about earlier after the time period. And in the weeks before and weeks after, that dip is not there. So I took their comments to be very serious as far as shop owners downtown. So we take a look at what happened. How do we get to where we are? So in the spring of '23, I learned from others that downtown shop owners expressed their concerns with the summer nights activities. So if you think about that, that's the spring of '23. That means they were impacted enough in the year of '22 to be getting together and talking about it. Okay, so after spring of '23, after their event was done for that summer, what I learned is that several shop owners got together and brainstormed together as far as, and here's the key statement, what changes can be made to drive commerce back to downtown shops during these events. That was one of the goals when this started, was to bring commerce to downtown and to highlight family-friendly type of activities. So then, on January 18th, I've learned that shop owners and summer nights staff met to explore solutions. Following that, the downtown shops prepared a letter, and they met with the Summer Nights Board to discuss the shop owners' letter content. Okay? At that time, at that February 22nd meeting, the letter states that they all agreed it wasn't fair to ask Summer Nights to move for the 2024 season, as it was too late for them to make other plans. In response, the Summer Nights group came along and they made several changes to their business model, but they stayed in the same location for 2024. Okay, that letter, which you guys received in your packet, was signed by 43 different downtown shop owners. Okay, so then on October 22nd, I list that date because that was the day I was asked if I would facilitate a meeting. Okay, so saying yes, that was when the first thing we got to do is figure out, okay, what does Summer Nights really need? I was told the backstory of all the issues, but basically what I learned from the Summer Nights leadership team was that they needed a downtown street location. It's a street dance. They want to have an intersection where there's sufficient square footage. It's helpful to have a multi-story building on the west side because the sun gets a little warm in the summertime, so that provides some shade. They also like to have a few trees. They need sufficient electrical power, and obviously they need some fencing. So that's what I learned from the Summer Nights group. I then met with several shop owners to understand their impacts. I met with those that were they have spoken out about this negatively impacting them, and I've also spoken with a few that received positive results with this. So in addition to that, I asked the Summer Nights folks to meet with me with Main Street Square staff. The initial meeting we had with Main Street Square, with Summer Nights leadership included, was a very positive meeting. Main Street Square is very open to leasing the entire space. They even provide the documentation. And we discussed sharing event duties in case it was there, and if the Summer Nights team didn't have enough staff to man some of this, that they would be willing to work with them and joint venture, so to speak, would be my term. And obviously, there needs to be some sharing of revenue if there's sharing of expenses and the operation. So that was very positive. Concurrently, there were several council members that were very interested in seeing Summer Nights continue. And I'm happy to say that I'm very impressed with a majority of the council members because I've had the opportunity to work with them, and they have met many times individually and as small groups trying to learn about Summer Nights and what their needs are and how to reach something that can be a win-win for everybody. During that, several council members, they actually viewed some of the alternative sites. They went above and beyond, all right? So from my perspective, what I understand this is that Summer Nights has the obligation to come forward and ask for a permit. It's not city council's job to say, here's where you need to go. When it became obvious that Summer Nights didn't really come along and propose an alternate space and say, here's where we want to be, and check the attitude and temperature of the council members, we then switched, and in the last meeting, we just had a few council members there, but we actually came along and said, hey, here's 3 locations for you to consider. None of those locations were used in the submittal. So anyway, current status, between August 22nd and now, discussions began in good faith, okay, to address the concerns of everybody involved. I haven't found anybody that wants to end or terminate Summer Nights. As a matter of fact, when we look at the social media, there's some misinformation going on out there. When the Rapid City Journal called me and said, hey, can we interview you? And I said, no, I have a statement to make for you. I don't know of anyone, city council, the people in the public, friends that I've talked to, Summer Nights people or downtown merchants, not one of them has said that they want to see Summer Nights go away. Everybody's been supportive, okay? There just remains one issue that I'll get to. So, council members have done their part to try and find another location. The information on social media is inaccurate. I've got a few examples here that you can look at. The electrical requirements, that's something that should be definable. Put an action list together, resolve it. As far as Main Street Square, they've been very supportive. It's where we're at. So there's some unstudied things here that came to light. The footprint that they're on is one where it's a main corridor going through town. Okay? And that main corridor intersects the main road that people use as tourists to come in and out of our town. Okay? And it's a one-way street. So when you close that street, it makes an issue for people coming into town that aren't familiar with our city. It also, because it's a one-way street, when you close it, it consumes all the parking spaces that can't be used otherwise, because if you were to only close half a block, which is really all they need, you can't have traffic come into a one-way street going the right way and then go out because there's no traffic lights, there's no anything to control it. So it's an issue. All right, and the next thing is you have a new hotel that's on St. Joe. That's going to increase the traffic even more. So our city has grown. The traffic is more than what it was back on 2014. It's considerably more, and you're going to have more yet. So that's an unstudied issue. And I also mentioned the issues with this being a two-way street. If it not being a two-way street. If it was on a two-way street, it would be less impactful. And if it was off of St. Joe, that whole corridor would be opened up for people to come and frequent the businesses that are there. I remain available for questions.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your work on this. Would any of the committee members have any comments or want to ask Steve some questions? Lindsay?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just take a moment, Steve, and acknowledge your efforts in this, and thank you for your significant contributions to this discussion. I think you've articulated and laid out the status of the work and the efforts that have gone forth quite well. There's not much to be said as far as at this time. So this presentation will be acknowledged, and we appreciate everything you've done. I know you talked about the parking restrictions being a consideration, and I was never made aware. Do you happen to know what the exact number of parking losses are off of St. Joseph? Was that 100 or 200 parking spots?
You know, I don't know the exact number. I've seen it written as 200. I couldn't tell you, except that I do know that when it comes to parking, the Summer Nights team has done a great job of putting notices on meters saying, hey, we're going to close this street down later in the day. You could be subject to towing. So even though you have a timeline of when the street is actually closed, there's still impact to the people coming downtown seeing those notices on the meters if they choose to read them. Mm-hmm. But as far as count, I did hear the number 200, but I don't know if that's true. I would like to address one more thing on parking, and the Summer Nights team has done such a good job that part of this is they're a victim of their own success, and that people coming to it, I've heard the story from some people who live downtown and have parking spots that are their designated parking spot, and on these nights they can't get into it or somebody else has used their parking spot. So it's an issue that goes beyond just the footprint of what they use, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. I guess, and just to reiterate on behalf of myself and what I believe some others that were part of this dialogue and this conversation, our concerns are largely driven by the safety and traffic impacts with the road closures happening on St. Joseph Street. I think it's important to note that. We were well aware of some of the ongoing impacts and concerns from our downtown business community. That was also taken into consideration, along with the efforts that went into understanding Summer Nights organization and what goes into making their event successful. We also recognize what a significant lift this is on behalf of Summer Nights and the organization. Volunteers themselves that put this event together week after week, and the work that goes into that, their volunteer efforts are to be commendable. We talk often as in our small group about how we can take this energy and passion for Summer Nights and recreate this and mimic this in other areas of city government and community opportunities to get involved. So it's been a fun process to be a part of. I am hopeful. I believe there are some great solutions proposed here. I am hopeful with the Main Street Square and their willingness to be involved in this conversation and to assist in the success of an ongoing viable future for all parties involved. Thank you.
John Roberts, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for your work on this. I find it interesting, and I wish that you would have put those those locations, proposed locations on here. So I've got many calls so far, none of them positive yet. I'm waiting for that one positive call. And they all start out by, why does the city council want to shut down Summer Nights? And I don't know a single person on this council that wants to shut down Summer Nights. And the first thing that I tell them is, well, we're looking for alternative locations. And everybody says, that's the first time I've heard that. It is interesting to see the amount of negative communications that is out there, but really, I guess not so much coming from our side yet. So I do appreciate you coming forward today. I think this is, it's an issue that we've known for over a decade. I mean, this is not a new conversation. We have known that there's an impact to the business community. We've talked, off and on for many years with, different people within the business community. We've looked at other times for different locations, but it seems like we've always been put into a corner, because if we start looking at things, then we're the people that are going to shut this down. And that's not the case. We just want to make this we want to make it an event that benefits everyone if possible. And I do agree with Lindsay, and I do agree with you. As Rapid City grows, we cannot afford to shut down one of our arterial streets for, that many hours, especially, because of how busy it is getting at those hours of the day, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock going through downtown. I mean, I see people sitting in the audience that have lived in Rapid City their whole lives, and like myself, I never thought I'd see traffic like this. But we have bad east to west connections in Rapid City anyway. So, I was curious if there's anybody from the business community that would like to say anything, or, because I do see there's a few people out in the audience. But
Would you allow me to respond first before you entertain that?
I should have known that I had to give you that time, Steve.
So that's why I what you addressed is why I put that image in this slide presentation. Social media is one thing, but when somebody comes along and puts up a billboard that says, "Don't let council cancel summer nights," I just want to go on record to say I've been involved very heavily over and over again, multiple meetings. Me either. I have never said we ought to kill it, and I haven't found anybody that wants to say that. As a matter of fact, I want to repeat, I'm happy, so proud of the council folks that we have, because so many of you have given of your personal time to walk with me, drive through some of these spots, because we weren't getting answers. So what did you do? Many of our council members took the time to really dig into this and try and learn about it and see what we can do to come up with a solution. So for that, I think is great. And when I see something like this sign that goes up and the negative stuff that was put out that is not true, it causes me to be that much more engaged, because this isn't necessary. This is the kind of stuff that I believe causes our citizens to not want to be council members. So that's just some food for thought. So thank you for allowing me to do this.
Council members, I am Justin Warner. I wrote the letter on behalf of my fellow business owners here in the downtown, and I just wanted to thank you all for, one, getting Steve involved in this. I think it brought a lot of much needed clarity and was able to cut through some of the emotional noise that has been involved in this. Obviously, this is going to be an emotional issue for everyone involved. I'm a relative newbie to this town, so I don't have nearly the stake in it that a lot of our community does. So I just want to say thank you for bringing Steve in, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to this. It's a big deal for everybody, as you can tell. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Any other comments? John? You're done. Steve, I had one question. If I understood you correctly, you mentioned this Brooks report.
Yes.
And in his original report, was there a location mentioned, or?
Yes, there is. The Brooks report has many suggestions. It was back at, if you go back to 2014, My first experience with a Summer Nights experience is when I had responsibilities in Montana. It was in Helena, Montana, and they had the equivalent to this as a startup, and it was fantastic. It was great. I was so happy when it got going here in Rapid City, South Dakota. But my understanding of this, at least what I've been told, is that when it got started, I believe City Council paid for Brooks to do a study for what would be the best location. And underneath that was family, drive business downtown, and have some fun, as in a concert type of series. And the reason I use the word modified, there are many recommendations in that report. The only one I could find that had a location and showed an image was it had Main Street Square highlighted and part of Main Street to the halfway block over to 700. And that was a limited area for people under 21, more youthful type of entertainment. And then going from the halfway block on Main Street over to 7th Street and then south, which is the footprint where they are now, that was the more adult-friendly, the over 21, where you'd have the concert and the alcoholic beverages. That was in the report as the recommendation. I don't know if that was tried, and I did not ask the question to see how it got to where it is. It's kind of the same thing, but not quite, because I know from visiting with the Main Street Square folks, they used to offer opportunity at the same time, but I think they have wound that down. The Brooks report also had a number of recommendations that I believe were utilized, and one of those that I noticed was Brooks also pointed out that it would be better if Main and St. Joe were turned into two-way streets. Now, I don't know the author's intention there, but being involved in the construction industry and dealing with a lot of traffic stuff in my time, I believe it's because of the very thing I mentioned earlier. You can't get access coming in the wrong way or going out the wrong way. So by this footprint being on a one-way street, it causes additional issues versus if it was on a two-way street moved, say, 1 block south.
Thank you, Steve. Lindsay?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I just triggered another thought here. Steve, if you would entertain me. I believe Roger Brooks did our original downtown study that had recommended Main Street Square. And we were talking about at that time from like the 2010 to 2012 period of how we can revitalize our downtown business district and bring life back to our downtown when so many cities across the nation had seen downtown business activities decline. Was there a recommendation formally made that once the square was built that it would house Summer Nights long-term, or was there an idea or a thought process behind that you recall?
Others may have more knowledge on that than I do. I was looking for specific things as I went through the report. It's rather long, but when you have a map that shows where to place this, obviously they were going for the feel and touch of a street dance, and that's what Summer Nights is saying, and it is a street dance. Many of us from the rural areas can probably identify with the value of that. But as far as Main Street Square goes, I have walked that with a few of the Summer Nights team, and what they point to is that the existing footprint is too small. And I can get their point, especially when you look at Summer Nights pictures that they've had from prior years. The footprint is too small. I was also told that Main Street Square at one time was intended to cover the whole block, but when the building was salvaged and used, that reduced the footprint. Now, when I walk out there and I look at Main Street Square and I think about, gee whiz, what if we have a nice big party here? There's beautiful monuments between 6th Street and Main Street Square. There's stuff in the way. That Main Street Square, leave the stuff that's on Main Street, but when you look at the sidewalk area, you have large stone type of items that really partition it off such that it's hard to flow an event onto Sixth Street. So that may be an opportunity in the future that the city could leverage, where you could have it more flow into Sixth Street on occasion and come back. But for right now, their point is understood that it's kind of small. Now, can they make it work? That's for somebody else to decide. Obviously, Main Street Square holds some very sizable events there, and they find a way to overflow. And you could, you give some parking back on St. Joe, you could take a few of the parking spots underneath in the parking structure for some of the activities. Does that answer what you're asking?
Yes, I guess in a sense, I just as a community, I thought that there was this idea that once Main Street Square opened, that would potentially be a future location, and not just Main Street Square, but utilizing Sixth Street, the alley systems, potentially some of the parking garage, lowest level, things like that.
Let me respond a little better. As being involved in this thing, I've heard so many ideas for where this should be located. The band shell over at the park, just a whole variety of locations. The most common one that I hear is, why isn't it at Main Street Square? Well, typically that response is coming from individuals that don't understand what Summer Nights is and what they do. Can it be fit there? Sure. But yeah, Main Street Square, I had heard that a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those of you who aren't aware, I think it's not really a secret, but I was part of the Summer Nights class that started, or part of the leadership Rapid City class that started Summer Nights, and I was on the board until 2011 sometime, but I haven't been involved with Summer Nights for well over a decade. So some of those questions, keep in mind when Summer Nights started, the square wasn't completed yet. So in answer to your question, yes, I think the thought at the time was in line with Roger Book's recommendation that when the square was completed, we would move to the square. Quite frankly, the location was picked, wanted to be downtown, wanted the street closure because there wasn't a square, and frankly, because there were fewer businesses, also Darla Vulcan was on the Summer Nights board, and in my leadership class, her husband Brian had Forefront, so they were supportive. He got the rest of the street. So frankly, that was the street that people least objected to having closed at the time, again, over a decade ago. I would say at that time, the idea of closing Main or St. Joe to traffic was viewed as a non-starter. So there really wasn't a lot of discussion at the time, especially for a new event that was untested. They weren't going to close Main or St. Joe. When the square got completed, we did meet with Sefner and the square management about relocating there. Frankly, at that time, the feeling was that Summer Nights, the crowd had outgrown the square already and that it wasn't going to fit. However, at that point, there were discussions because people were more open to closing Main or St. Joe to try to have a complimentary event. And if you remember, there were a couple of years where on Thursday nights, the square would also have entertainment and would have bands, and they were kind of complimentary, so you could go to one or the other. And then Main Street was closed down to facilitate movement between the square and the Summer Nights event. But that, again, petered out after a couple of years. But that kind of was how we ended up on 7th Street and why we didn't move to the square at the time the square was open. After the square event petered out, I think that, I don't know what discussions at that point. I wasn't involved anymore, so I can't really tell you what happened after that. But I would think Summer Nights probably feels like, well, we have a successful event here, and like any successful event, they're concerned about moving it. but on the other hand, it seems pretty clear they're having a negative impact. So I think we're at the point where there obviously needs to be discussions about where the appropriate location is, and probably no location is going to be perfect for everyone.
Lindsay?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joel, for that background. That's much appreciated. I do have some concerns with issuing this event permit, just looking back to the Rapid City Municipal Code 12-20 or 12.20.030C.2. It states that no special event permit shall be issued if, and it has a whole host of reasons and concerns. And one of those is just causes unreasonable or inadequate, unreasonable impact to the surrounding businesses or community, and a number of others that might fit into here. However, that said, we know that this location isn't working due to the safety and the traffic impacts with the St. Joseph Street closure. None of us want to see summer nights go away. We ultimately want this wonderful community event to remain successful and have a vibrant future in Rapid City. However, we've went through this process, and to date, Summer Nights has rejected every opportunity that's been presented or offered to assist them in a successful relocation. So I appreciate all the background and input. Feel that we might have to guide them, and there might be some additional support and community effort to come alongside and support this great organization, and just making sure this path can be successful for all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any other comments, questions?
Move to acknowledge.
Move to acknowledge. Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Second by Roberts. And may we have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn.
Well, meeting closed.
Motion by.
Well,